The year is 1884. The Arizona Territory is still 3 years away from becoming anything on a map that Washington takes seriously. Fort St. Elridge is being built on land that 2 separate engineering teams have already surveyed, assessed, and declared structurally sound. The geology is sedimentary rock and compacted desert soil. Stable, predictable, known. On the morning of March 3rd, a private named Samuel Hargrove climbs down into the partially excavated foundation beneath the Western Supply Depot. His boots hit the earth. He raises his shovel, and the ground gives back the wrong sound. Not the dull resistance of packed soil, not the scrape of stone. Something underneath him is hollow, resonant, as if the desert floor is a drum stretched over empty space. He does not report it immediately. He hits the same spot again, thinking he has misheard. The echo comes back deeper the second time. That sound, that single wrong note from a shovel in the Arizona dirt, is going to trigger a chain of events that someone inside the United States Army will spend the next 40 years trying to make sure you never find out about. This is the investigation into what was buried beneath Fort St. Elridge. Not what the Army said was there, not what the revised maps show. What Private Hargrove heard when the ground answered back. To understand why this discovery matters, you have to understand what Fort St. Elridge was supposed to be. This was not a fort built for defense. It wasn't positioned for visibility, elevation, or tactical advantage. Military engineers chose this specific location in the Arizona Territory for one reason: proximity to a rail corridor and water access point that Army planners believed would become strategically essential within a decade. In other words, this was infrastructure, calculated, long-term, the kind of installation the Army builds when it intends to stay somewhere permanently, which is exactly why the surveys mattered so much. 2 independent teams assessed this ground before a single nail was driven. Civilian engineers first, then military surveyors. Their reports agreed on every point. Stable geology, no subsurface anomalies, no cavities, no voids, no structural concerns. Signed, filed, cross-referenced. The Army does not build on land it hasn't checked twice, except that beneath the Western Supply Depot, the ground had not read the report. By the time Captain Elias Mercer arrived at the excavation site, Hargrove had exposed enough of the anomaly to confirm that this was not a pocket of unstable soil. Mercer was not a man given to alarm. He had overseen military construction across the Southwest for nearly a decade. He had dealt with collapsed tunnels, flooded foundations, and geological surprises that no survey had predicted. But he stood at the edge of that excavation for a long time before he said anything. What was emerging from the earth beneath the fort was not geological, it was architectural. A stone step, then another beneath it, then the unmistakable geometry of a staircase carved directly into bedrock, descending at an angle that took it away from the fort's footprint and down into darkness that the excavation lights couldn't reach. Mercer ordered the civilian workers off the site within the hour. The stated reason was structural instability. No one argued. Several of them, by their own later accounts, were grateful for the excuse to leave. By nightfall, only military personnel remained, and the lights in the excavation stayed on until morning. The first written record of what lay beneath Fort St. Elridge appears in a fragmented engineering log recovered decades later from a private collection in Santa Fe. The entry is dated the night of March 3rd. It is not signed. It describes, in clipped military language, an enclosed descent inconsistent with surveyed geology, and notes that further exposure is not advised pending higher authorization. Routine language, the kind of careful phrasing a man uses when he is not sure who will eventually read what he writes. But then the handwriting changes. Midway through the entry, the pen pressure increases. The letters tighten. Something shifted in whoever was holding that pen. A change of mood, a change of mind, or an interruption they never explained. The final line is written twice, darker than everything around it, as if the author pressed down harder to make sure it would survive. Seal access immediately, not pause operations, not await further instruction. Seal access immediately. In military construction language, that phrase does not appear in response to a geological quirk. It appears in response to something that needs to be made inaccessible before anyone else sees it. Lieutenant Howard Caldwell was 29 years old when Captain Mercer ordered him down the staircase. He kept a diary. Most of it survived. Parts of it did not. Not because paper degrades, but because someone went through it with ink before it entered the historical record. Several passages are obscured. Several pages are missing entirely. What remains is enough. Caldwell describes the descent in the precise observational language of a man trained to report what he sees without editorializing. He notes the temperature dropped with each step, not gradually, the way temperature drops in any underground space, but sharply, and then stopped dropping, settling into a cold that he describes as absolute, as if below a certain point, the heat of the desert above had simply ceased to apply. The walls of the passage were stone, smooth, but not in the way that tool marks leave stone smooth, in the way that time and pressure leave stone smooth, the way a riverbed looks after 1,000 years of water. Except this was bedrock in the middle of a desert. No water had done this, and the walls were not blank. Caldwell describes patterns embedded in the surface. He is careful about his language here. A man trying to be precise about something that resists precision. He writes that they were not carvings in any decorative sense. Not pictograms, not writing, at least not writing that resembled any script he had encountered. Instead, he uses a word that stays with you once you read it. Repetition. As if whatever marked these walls was not communicating a message, but repeating an instruction. The same sequence of forms, again and again, at intervals too regular to be accidental. Instructions for what? He does not speculate. At the base of the staircase, the passage opened. Caldwell writes only one sentence about the dimensions of what he found there, but it is the sentence that gets underlined twice in his own handwriting. The one detail he apparently felt the need to emphasize to himself even as he wrote it down. The chamber was larger than the depot above it should have allowed by any reasonable measure. Think about that for a moment. He is not saying the chamber was large. He is saying it was larger than the space above it, larger than the building sitting on top of it, should have made physically possible. Whatever was beneath Fort St. Elridge was not simply underground. It was architecturally inconsistent with the ground above it. The chamber had recesses along its walls. Caldwell counts them, but does not give a final number. The journal becomes less linear here, more fragmented, as if he is writing in pieces rather than continuously. Each recess contained objects, wrapped in layered material that had not degraded. He describes the wrapping with the focused attention of someone who finds the preservation itself alarming, not the objects, but the fact that they had survived in conditions that should have destroyed them. Inside the wrapping, metallic fragments. He handles one. His description is brief, careful, and clearly uncomfortable. The alloy does not match anything in his experience. Not iron, not bronze, not any military metal he has worked with. He records the weight as wrong, too light for its apparent density. He notes a surface texture that he cannot name. He puts it back. The floor of the chamber is covered in geometric formations, etched in, not painted, arranged in a pattern that Caldwell reads, instinctively, though he cannot explain why, as directional. As if something on that floor is pointing toward something, or away from something, or marking a position relative to something that no longer exists, or something that does exist and simply isn't on any map. And then there is the silence. Caldwell spends more words on the silence than on any other detail. It is clearly the thing that bothers him most, more than the impossible dimensions, more than the unrecognizable metal, more than the repetitive markings on the walls. Sound does not echo in the chamber, not diminished echo, not muffled echo, no echo at all. He and the soldier accompanying him speak to each other in normal voices. The words travel from one to the other and then simply stop. No reflection, no return. The chamber absorbs every syllable as if the sound has somewhere to go that is not back to the people who made it. Caldwell writes, I said his name twice, standing 6 feet from him, and each time it felt like I had said it only to myself. He does not use the word wrong in that entry, but the entry itself feels wrong in a way that careful, military, by-the-book handwriting rarely does. He climbed back up the staircase. He did not go back down. By March 6th, the staircase was gone. Not excavated, not documented, not assessed. Gone, sealed with reinforced stone and timber in less than 12 hours, according to civilian accounts of supply deliveries made to the fort that week. The work was done at night. The materials were brought in under armed guard. No construction log records the process. One soldier, dismissed from service the following month under circumstances that no official record explains, later claimed the sealing was conducted with an urgency that made no sense for routine structural work. He said it felt less like construction and more like closing something that had been opened by mistake. His name does not appear in any Fort St. Elridge personnel records after March 1884. Here is what the Army did next and why it matters. Every institution that buries something has to do paperwork over the burial. That paperwork is where the cracks appear. In one revised engineering blueprint of Fort St. Elridge, produced after March 1884, the foundation beneath the western depot appears measurably thicker than in blueprints drawn before the discovery. Not because the foundation was reinforced, because something beneath it needed to disappear into the extra inches on a drawing. In another document, a section of the fort is labeled with a designation that appears nowhere else in comparable military construction records of the period: non-essential substructure. Non-essential substructure. Military engineers do not label things non-essential. They label things by function. When a space has no function label, it is because its actual function cannot be written down. And in the correspondence between regional command posts in the weeks following March 3rd, a phrase appears that has no precedent in earlier Fort St. Elridge communications. Containment protocol. Not geological reassessment, not structural review, not archaeological consultation. Containment protocol. That phrase has a specific meaning in military usage. It does not describe a problem being studied. It describes a problem being managed, actively, deliberately, with the assumption that the problem will not be resolved, only controlled. The Army did not think it had found something interesting beneath Fort St. Elridge. It thought it had found something that needed to be contained. Let's do what every serious investigation has to do at some point. Let's try to explain this away. The most obvious explanation is natural cave formation. The Southwest is riddled with limestone cavities, collapsed lava tubes, and erosion chambers that surface surveys miss. A staircase-like formation could be the result of geological layering that mimics deliberate architecture. The smooth walls could be water erosion from an ancient water table. The sound behavior could be an acoustic property of the chamber's specific geometry. These explanations work for individual details. They do not work for the combination. Natural cave formations do not have repeating geometric patterns on their walls at regular intervals. They do not have recesses containing wrapped, preserved objects. They do not have floors etched with directional formations. And they do not produce a military response that includes coded telegrams, immediate sealing, document revision, and a dismissal on record that comes with no explanation. The second explanation is unmapped indigenous construction. The Arizona Territory in 1884 contained structures built by cultures that preceded European contact by centuries. Some of those structures are still being discovered: an underground ceremonial space, or a storage complex predating the fort entirely. This is genuinely possible, except that Caldwell's account specifically notes the construction does not match any known indigenous building practice of the region. And the military's response, containment, not documentation, is the opposite of how Army engineers handled indigenous archaeological discoveries, which were typically recorded, sometimes looted, but never actively suppressed in this manner. The third explanation is the simplest and the most uncomfortable. Something was beneath that fort that the Army recognized as significant, did not understand, and decided that the correct response was not investigation but erasure. Not because they knew what it was, but because they didn't. And that uncertainty was more dangerous than anything they could name. Modern ground-penetrating surveys of the area that would have corresponded to Fort St. Elridge's western depot show irregular density patterns beneath the surface. Not conclusive. The surveyors are careful about that word, but irregular in ways that don't match the surrounding geology. Irregular in ways that align with the footprint described in the 1884 engineering logs. Irregular in ways that have twice prompted requests for official excavation authorization. Both requests were denied. No reason was given for either denial. Here's the detail that this investigation keeps returning to, the one that resists every rational framework. Private Hargrove heard something when his shovel hit the ground. One wrong note. One hollow echo from Earth that was supposed to be solid. Within 72 hours of that sound, a United States Army installation had been partially shut down. A staircase leading into unmapped underground architecture had been permanently sealed. Multiple documents had been revised or removed. At least one soldier had been dismissed without explanation. And a phrase, containment protocol, had entered the official correspondence of a fort that was supposed to be a routine infrastructure project. 72 hours. From one wrong sound to a coordinated institutional response that took 40 years to even partially surface in historical records. That speed is the tell. Institutions move slowly when they are confused. They move fast when they recognize something. When they have a category for what they're dealing with, even if that category is classified, even if it has no public name, even if the protocol it triggers has never appeared in any document a civilian was meant to read. The Army moved fast at Fort St. Elridge, which means someone somewhere in that chain of command knew exactly what category this fell into. What was beneath Fort St. Elridge? A natural formation that happened to produce every characteristic of deliberate construction while leaving no geological explanation for those characteristics. An indigenous structure so far outside the known architectural record of the region that military engineers had no framework for documenting it and responded with suppression because documentation felt impossible. Something older than either of those categories. Something that the United States Army in 1884 had encountered before, in some form, in some other place, with enough precedent to already have a protocol ready when Hargrove's shovel hit the wrong note in the Arizona dirt. There is no confirmed answer, earned. There are only the gaps in the record, the revised blueprints, the missing pages, the unsigned entries, the dismissed soldier, the sealed staircase, the phrase that shouldn't exist in that context. And there is the chamber itself, if it still exists beneath whatever has been built over it since. Still dimensionally impossible. Still silent in the way Caldwell described, absorbing sound rather than returning it, as if the space has somewhere to send what enters it. Still waiting, the way things wait when they have already outlasted every attempt to make them disappear. The ground beneath Fort St. Elridge was supposed to be known, surveyed, assessed, confirmed, and something beneath it answered back anyway. Just like Hargrove's shovel, just like that first wrong hollow sound, the one that started all of this, the one that somebody decided the rest of us were never supposed to hear.